Hi there, lovely listeners. This is Shelley Dax, your host for the Tattoo Sisterhood Revolution. We have an incredible woman here today, Liz London, founder of Ladyboss Nation. I just love that name. But before we dive in with Liz, let's go over really quickly what we're doing here. In this free virtual series, I'm speaking with some powerhouse artists and badass entrepreneurs about the beginning of their career, what kinds of obstacles they've dealt with, and how they've built their clientele or following and grown as an artist or business, with a special emphasis on being a woman in this industry, which has traditionally been a men's club. And when you take all of these sessions in, you'll walk away with tips on breaking into the industry, magnifying your talent, being an artist who doesn't compromise your values, very important in this, and boosting your financial abundance, doing what you love. Doesn't that sound exciting? Myself, along with this group of gracious speakers, are sharing our ups and downs and our tips and tricks and our whats and whys. I would encourage you to listen to each of these sessions, as there's a ton of free guidance, and who knows, something you hear could change the direction of your life. So just a reminder, every morning we'll send you an email with a link to the interviews of the day. So watch for those and check your junk mail in case something seems to be missing. All right, let's get to this. I'm happy to introduce Liz London, the author of The Business Bible for the Unconventional Entrepreneur and founder of the Ladyboss Nation. She's a certified business coach, serial entrepreneur, certified dog trainer, belly dancer, reptile raiser, and a bit of a bohemian punk. Liz does not make six figures or drive a nice car, but her book was endorsed by Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. Her style of business coaching is all about breaking down the core conventions of business and helping unconventional entrepreneurs apply them to their unique industry. Hello, Liz, which is why I asked you to be here today, because definitely being a tattoo artist is an unconventional enterprise.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that I love that you're having me. I really appreciate it. I love that you're having this summit. I think that you're going to have some really valuable information for people in this industry, for sure.
Absolutely. I've had some amazing speakers so far. So awesome.
Great.
So tell me, first of all, a little bit about what in the world made you start off into working with unconventional businesses.
Well, I think like everyone else who is in an interesting industry, our path is always a fun story, and I'll try to keep mine brief. But I did not set out to become a business owner. I did not set out to be a business coach by any means. I never in my education had taken a business course, but I was passionate about an art, like all of us are. Mm-hmm. And I decided to open a dance studio. So I had a plan for my life. I was going to be a zoologist. I was a zookeeper. I loved working with animals. And then I took a belly dance class that changed my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So talk about unconventional. At 22, I decided, you know what, this is going really well. My hobby is really lucrative right now. So let's open a dance studio. And there are not a lot of books on how to run a successful business as a belly dancer.
Right. That makes sense.
So I knew from the way I was raised, both of my parents are entrepreneurs. I come from a long line of small business owners, but I knew that I had a lot to prove. And I wanted to take my business as seriously as anyone else, anyone in a pantsuit who's at a conference table. I really wanted to take it seriously. And I make a joke, it's a true story, but I make a joke in my book about a moment where I was feeling like, you know what, it's really hard to be taken seriously when it's 2:00 in the morning, you're arguing with a Syrian restaurant owner and you're half naked in a belly dance costume and you're trying to renegotiate rates. It's like, no, you know what? It's like you said, I'm not compromising. And so I wanted to create a space where I could be taken seriously as a business owner, as a dance studio owner, as a performer. And we expanded into vaudeville shows. We had burlesque, we had aerialists. And even later when I opened a dog training business as well, all of the conventions of business I realized through self-education, through reading every book the library had, they all apply. They just they aren't really written for us, are they?
True. Yes. And you know what's really interesting? You talk about being taken seriously in a belly dancing outfit, but you know what's hilarious is it was the opposite for me in the tattoo industry because I actually would wear like little jackets and things like that, you know, and people wouldn't take me seriously because I was maybe just looking a little too professional in comparison to what was
Oh
happening.
yeah.
Yeah, I went to a
Yeah.
tattoo convention where everybody's in a sea of black t-shirts, right?
Right.
And
And you're a colorful gal.
and I'm more
You
colorful and
yeah,
fun and I mean I'm whatever. I was called the fluffy tattoo artist there for a bit, but I
exactly.
don't care. It's what you want to put into it. It's what it means to you. And I love what you said on your website about talking with three coaches who were like older stuffy businessmen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
with a lot
There
of darlings and sweethearts thrown around.
yes. So this was all happening in Memphis, Tennessee. And at that point, there weren't a lot of people who who didn't fit the stereotype of a stuffy older white gentleman in a suit
Right.
who were offering business services. And I wanted them. I said, you know what? I don't care. I want to take this seriously. But I couldn't get past all of that. Yeah, the sexism, and even if they didn't mean it, even if it was completely
Right.
harmless in their mind, it's still condescending, isn't it, to be talked to like that?
Well, and that's something that we're trying to raise awareness of in the tattoo industry too, is
Right,
that kind of treatment that, even if they're not aware, it's like, hey, it's time to like get some awareness around this and
right.
some education. Hmm.
Exactly. Pay attention. The words that you use are powerful. And when you're already a brand new business owner, when you're already feeling a bit when you feel vulnerable, you're already feeling intimidated by everything
Hmm.
that's going on around you, and you don't know everything, and you may not even know anything about business, but you love
Yeah.
what you do, and you're an amazing artist. You've got a great personality. Whatever it is that's leading you to be successful up until that point, you want to be taken seriously. And so when you're already feeling defensive, and somebody starts treating you in a way that makes you think, "Well, I don't fit in,"
Hmm.
this is not the conventional way of doing things. I think that's where we get our fur a little bristled.
That's a good way of putting it from someone who has a like dogs and dog training, right? Your fur is bristled.
Yes,
I love that.
yes, yeah. So
So tell
so
me,
that's how I ended up there. Yeah, that's how I
right.
ended up doing what I do.
And that's what kind of like spurred you on and like you're gonna make it different for people. You're gonna what is it that decided to do now that you're actually helping other people with then?
Yeah, so what happened was I had my dance studio for about 10 years, and we started, like I said, some different types of productions, and we expanded, and things were going really
Yeah.
smoothly. And then as life does, it changes. And so my family moved abroad, and I had a child, and I could no longer teach dance for a while, and I was no longer living in my own country. So what I ended up doing was, as I was working remotely on some other types of business services, helping people with their own websites, just random things that I had learned in teaching myself business.
Oh, wow.
Um, I realized, you know what, this is my new thing. This is where I can be useful, and helping other dance studios at first, other dog trainers at first, similar like-minded industries. But then realizing there is an entire world that is so disconnected from what the convention of what a business should look like. When you
Hmm.
think of a good business owner, a businessman, a businesswoman, you picture somebody in a suit, you picture
Right.
somebody,
With a briefcase.
right, you picture somebody who talks about financial projections and and profit
It's true.
margins, right? That's the stuff that you picture.
Yeah.
But the reality is the disconnect is so great. The reality is the majority of small business owners in America right now are you and me. They are teeny tiny. I don't mean small business, I mean super small business. I
Hmm.
mean one woman shows,
Solopreneurs, right?
solopreneurs, the momtrepreneurs who are like
Mompreneurs.
balancing.
Right.
Yep. The majority of small business owners are not people who have a degree in business. They are people like us who have a passion about something and are trying to figure out how to make a living off of it.
That's a really good point because um, a lot of people that come into the industry don't realize that you are your own boss. When you're a tattoo artist, it's very
Yes.
rare that you actually are an employee. You're
Yep.
typically an independent contractor. And so whether or not you work in a shop, you still have to promote yourself,
Oh,
figure
yeah.
out your own paperwork, keep your own receipts, all of that. And a lot of my students over the years are like, I don't want to do that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's like,
and what's
let's
really
make it fun.
interesting is there's so many different industries who all have that same story. I've spoken with massage therapists who go to years of school to learn massage therapy, and they may be the most brilliant people with regards to body mechanics, but not every massage school teaches business courses. That you don't know how to promote yourself, you don't know how to run a website, you don't necessarily know how to offer proper customer service. There's so many different industries. I could go on with examples, but I won't waste your time. But
Sure.
but the reality is that when I started examining all these different types of businesses who are what I would consider unconventional, the tattoo artists, the jewelry designers, the belly dancers, like I say, reptile raisers, because I also, just for fun, I like to breed my snakes and sell them. But there are communities of people who do that for a living, and that's not necessarily something that you go to school for. But once you boil it all down, once you examine the case studies of what makes a traditional business successful, it really comes down to what I've boiled down to the 9 conventions of business, no matter how unconventional your business is.
Right, that it still applies to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Even if you're just kind of a single lonely person sitting there running your own business, I mean, it still applies, these core principles. Okay.
And like you said, you may not think about, when you sign up to become a tattoo artist, if that becomes your dream, you may not think about that applying to you. You don't think of yourself necessarily as a business owner until a couple years down the road you realize that your bookkeeping is out of whack and you're losing customers and you don't know why, and you can't get new customers. That is usually when most of us business owners, right around 4 or 5 years, realize, okay, my skill, my talent, and my passion have gotten me this far, and now I'm stuck.
Yeah, actually, it was for me about 2 or 3 years into owning my own business, that I actually did get a business coach and start taking some business classes. And I'm not saying they were fun and exciting all the time, but I learned a ton, and it was very, very helpful. And
that's what I discovered with starting the Ladyboss Nation. I wanted there to be a place for people like us to take business courses that were fun.
Yay! I was going to ask you about that, how you came up with that name and how you got your digital tribe started.
Yeah, well, you've seen the show, I'm sure, Girlboss, a couple years ago, that got really popular. And I loved the concept of that. And I loved the fact that here's this cool, rad chick who's turning this, clothing flipping into a business. And now she's like a mogul. Like, I love that that's happened. Good job. But I don't identify with #Girlboss because I'm a woman. I don't want to be thought of as a girl anymore. So I came up with the Ladyboss Nation, honestly, is just a place where all of my clients, in variety of capacities, because I do freelance work as well. So all of my clients could hang out in a group, asking each other questions. There's no point in all of us reinventing the wheel, right?
Yes.
So in much the same way that you are personally so supportive of other tattoo artists, and your whole goal is to help take that competitiveness out of it so that you guys can support each other and we can all grow as an industry together instead of like hiding our secrets. That's what I was trying to create this room for, so that people were starting to ask each other questions like, hey, do any of you use LinkedIn, and is it important? Because I keep seeing ads that LinkedIn is like the most important thing I could do for my business right now. Well, guess what? Like, for some people, it really and truly is a very great way to close sales and to network. But I don't know that it's the right place for a tattoo artist.
Right.
I
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
everything doesn't apply to you. So in this Facebook group, we grew from, my 30 or 40 clients to now we've got about 200 and I don't know, 220 people who just started joining the group to ask each other questions like, hey, you run a business and you're also, whatever, a mom, or you work remotely, which prior to COVID was a
Yeah.
little bit unconventional in its own.
Yes.
But
It's
people would
definitely
ask
different
each
now,
other.
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, but now,
And
we had
social
a
media,
place.
sorry, social media and all of that has made everything really different, even in the tattoo industry. Just the 14 years I've been tattooing,
Yep,
watching
yep.
that just get huge, and be replacing things like business cards and networking at the
Oh, yeah,
local, whatever. And now your
hashtags.
portfolio is on Instagram.
Yep, exactly. And so the courses that we started doing online, with my coaching groups, I put them all online so that anybody can sign up and take them. But the courses are things like do-it-yourself photography with your iPhone.
I
Because
love it.
for a tattoo artist, your photography is everything, and you can't hire a professional photographer every time you do a new piece of work, right? But
True.
if somebody wants to see what you do and what your art is all about, if you don't have a clear photo on Instagram with a hashtag of your local, like for me, I live in Columbus. And so the way I was introduced to the best artists in the area is I started following hashtag Columbus tattooers,
Hmm.
and the ones that were consistently posting the most beautiful work. Well, that's who I'm on the wait list for.
Hmm. Yeah, that
And
makes
so
sense.
those are the classes that we genuinely need, that are practical, that are realistic. How can I take a better picture using some tin foil and bouncing the light off the window of this great tattoo that I just did? Because you want to show off your work flawlessly and you want to be professional about it, but we don't necessarily have the money to invest in,
Hmm.
a major setup.
Well, I love the fact that you're connecting people to be able to talk about all the different aspects of starting this, even if you're on a shoestring.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? And if people are talking about it with each other, that's great. Like, yeah, everyone's supporting each other and helping. I love that.
Yeah. And now
Yeah.
I will say before, everyone listening starts to think that we're this hunky dory, like kumbaya happy, we support everything. I am, I am pretty, I'm pretty tough when it comes to my standards. And I think that you mentioned that, like you said in the introduction, that you were not going to compromise on our art,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
As tattoo artists, I think the one of the conventions of business, that most often kind of gets pushed to the side that we forget about is professionalism and integrity.
Yes.
And so I do want to point out that with professionalism, we have to define it for ourselves, and we have to define it not just for your industry but also for your own personal brand. So what professional looks like to Disney is not the same as what a professional tattoo artist could be, right? And so I want to point out that when it comes down to classes and to learning the business, I do get tough on self-examination. Like,
Hmm.
okay, like even in my book, at the end of every chapter, there are worksheets and there are challenges so that you can look at yourself and really examine, okay, my art is fantastic and I'm not going to compromise my art. But there is a very fine line in the tattoo industry between the customer is always right, maintaining the integrity of your business and maintaining the integrity of your art. And
Yeah.
that's what you see most people really struggle with, because
Yep.
we get so passionate, right? I don't want to compromise my reputation by doing this crap piece on you. And so we tend to drop that customer service a little bit from time to time, and tell ourselves and tell each other, no, it's okay, it's fine, because I'm not going to compromise my art. But sometimes what I find in working one-on-one with people is you really have to look at them and say, listen, the customer is not always right. Trust me, they're not always right. But you do need to define what professional means to your business. If you
Hmm.
want to be taken seriously, you need to set your own guidelines. And, you can't use the same guidelines as every other business.
Yeah.
For example, if you work in some places, colored hair, tattoos, piercings, smoking on the job, cursing, those are not professional aspects, right? You
Hmm.
can't get away with that in some places. Is it okay in your shop?
Right.
I don't know. It might be
Got it.
totally. Sure. But you have the point of running a good business is write down what you would say is what you want everyone who, if you were like, imagine that you did hire 10 employees, what would you train those 10 employees to do that would represent you well? You want to
Right.
have their back, but you also want them to have your back. So I think going through the workbooks, going through the classes, those are the types of things that I do tend to come down hard on people so that you really spend some time reflecting on what your values are, what standards you want to hold your own business and your future employees to so that you could be a mogul, so that you could run a badass business, even if it's just you.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the other core conventions that you hold to?
Oh, sure. So there are, I consider 9 conventions. So first and foremost is professionalism. And like I said, you always have to kind of find what you define professionalism as. Second is integrity. And the title of that chapter is Even Badasses Need Integrity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Very, very good.
you have to remember what the word integrity really means. And so just because you can be a tough person, you can be a cool chick, you can have whatever style, whatever attitude you really want. I mean, even look at somebody. I always look at Tabitha Coffey from the hair salon. You know,
Okay.
she always says personality is who you are, but your attitude is how you represent your traits outwardly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she's a tough, and she's a bitch, right? She even calls herself a bitch. She's a tough, badass chick, but she still maintains a lot of integrity. So I
I
think
think
that's
that's really important in this industry because I've heard so many stories about people who, oh, let's just say like they paid their deposit on a tattoo and then, the artist promised it by a certain time or something like that. And then the artist doesn't get to it. And the artist
mm-hmm.
keeps putting them off and putting them off. And soon the artist is on vacation or, whatever. So
Yeah,
integrity is extremely important so that
it
your
really
clients will
is.
trust you.
Absolutely. This is really a one-on-one interaction, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a transaction between you and one other person, and there has to be a lot of trust because you are affecting their body
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of their life.
Yes.
And you have to spend hours of time face to
Together.
face.
That's
So,
very true.
you have to keep that in mind, and it all boils down to professionalism and integrity. So number 3 is your brand clarity. And that kind of goes along with, like you have talked about, having your values very clear, having a brand. Even if your brand is unconventional for a tattoo artist,
Mm-hmm.
you could be, the clean cut, absolutely, straight laced tattoo artist, and that could be part of your brand. That's fine. Your personality doesn't have to be your brand, but you have to have a clear understanding of who your people are, who you're after with your market. Number 4 is time management, which a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us creatives tend to have difficulty with.
Yes.
5 is creativity, which you guys, this industry, we do not need any help with that. But
Got that
sometimes
one down solid.
yeah, sometimes though, I think we forget to apply how creative we are to running a business.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
especially in marketing, you can be so creative. You don't have to do the same social media marketing that everyone does. There are so many really creative, clever things you can do as a tattoo artist to generate
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen more and more and more
publicity.
of that all the time. Just people doing their own thing, like kind of what you just said as well, is that people just, I love it. I love the fact that they don't feel like their website has to have skull and crossbones tattoo,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all dark and red and old school or whatever, which was, and even the word tattoo, a lot of people like see it in
Like
signs
Ed
and
Hardy.
windows. Yeah, it just looks, like a certain way, and
Yep.
that's the way you do it. No, 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 no. Things have changed so much, and of course, again, social media has helped a lot with that. But yeah, just starting realizing your own creativity and putting that out there in this aspect of your business too, not
Yeah.
just in your art. Yeah.
Yeah. And business doesn't have to be boring. We don't have to be sterile.
Right.
We don't have to wear a business suit. You can be creative and still run a really badass business. Like I even just now, like I get excited because all of a sudden I'm starting to imagine, okay, this really girly, really straight laced, feminine studio. And the whole brand is about, like, I'm imagining, like taking the idea of wedding shops where you've got champagne, you've got really elegant
Yeah.
couches. It is now an experience where you go for girls' night or for self-care. And like that's a whole different image of what a tattoo shop could
Mhm.
be. But right now I'm getting goosebumps because I'm like, damn, I want to book an
Just
appointment
thinking about
there.
that, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is that a lot more people are starting to expand into things like that. In fact, where I live in Oregon, the because of the fact that we have to actually go to tattoo school here, it's regulated by the state. It's totally different
Mm-hmm.
than it is in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other states. People come out of it with a little bit higher level of professionalism, kind of starting right off the bat, and they are definitely some of my former students. Their shops are beautiful. They're more like an art gallery,
Oh, nice.
just gorgeous. And so yes, that's a
Yeah, and
different way of putting it
extend that
together.
into your marketing, extend that into even your bookkeeping. Your bookkeeping doesn't have to be lame and boring. Like I do something with my group. I haven't done it in a while, but we do spirits and spreadsheets where
Mhm.
on Friday nights we all grab a cocktail and we sit down and we do our bookkeeping live with each other. And
What? I love that. I think I better join that.
right? Like I have glittery rose gold everything. That's my brand. And so I have my little spreadsheets that look like my brand. And I sit there and I tap my boring numbers in, but I get it done. And then I feel awesome because I'm like, I know exactly how much
And
money
you're
I've made.
connecting. Oh, that's
Yeah,
so great. Like when I
exactly.
did my taxes last year, I lit a bunch of candles and put on
Yes,
some
ma'am.
music, and I
Yes,
got out
ma'am.
a margarita, and I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And that
Yup.
I just decided in my mind, I'm going to
Yeah.
make this fun.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. So yeah, okay, so that's where creativity comes in. Then you've got the really boring stuff like we were starting to talk about, the financial milestones,
Mhm.
but you have to have them. You
Yes.
really have to have them. You have to know exactly where you're going if you know how you're going to get there, right? So you need to know how much money do I need coming in the door every month to pay my bills, to pay my
Mhm.
shop's bills, and to actually, have something where I'm able to invest in the future. How many clients do I need to make that happen? How many potential clients am I coming into contact with on a day-to-day basis? If it's not enough that I could convert even 1% of them into clients, then I need to change how I am approaching my marketing, my
Mhm.
advertising,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't
Yes.
know those numbers off the top of your head, then um, 6 months to a year down the road, you're going to realize I'm out of money. I don't have any bookings and I don't know what to do.
If
Right.
people understood that right off the bat, they would be head and shoulders above a lot of other artists because,
Period.
yeah, that is, gosh, it's not that hard when you actually break it down.
Well,
Like
it's not, is
the
it?
way you just said it, and that's what I learned way back when too, is that, if you just say, how many do I have to do? What does that mean?
Yep.
Divide that by how my expenses are, my fixed expenses. I know it sounds like
It
some
sounds lame,
crazy guy
but
talking about it, but it really is
yeah, you can do it in
important.
an hour. Give me an hour of your time, and I'll even do it with a glass of wine if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
We will do those numbers
Make it
because
fun.
all you have to do is you have to just start keeping track of how much does my average client spend, and if you don't know that, then that's the first place to start. Write down how much each tattoo. I'm sure that a lot of tattooers artists get paid in cash the same way that servers and other types of
Yes.
performers get paid, and so it's difficult sometimes. You don't write down, okay, well, this guy only paid me $75 last week, and then this lady, I got this much for this same thing, and I negotiated a little bit lower rate. A lot of us don't keep track of that when we're just
Right.
starting out. But if you know those numbers, and if you think about it, like I said, in terms of how many people do I talk to on a daily basis, how many of those people could be clients, and how many of them are going to spend the average amount? Okay, is that going to pay my bills? No. All right, this is not a viable
This isn't
business
working.
solution.
So for people who are afraid of, say, using QuickBooks or something like that, it's too much, or they just don't have the
Oh,
time
don't
to learn,
bother.
what would you say would be an alternative to something like that?
I am perfectly happy with a good old fashioned Excel spreadsheet. I even have a template that I give out for free in my group, where, like right now, I have one that's customized for crafters because
Mhm.
I had a group of crafters and they wanted it. So I have one that shows your Etsy sales and your Amazon sales, and it shows your taxes. So it's a template where you can just plug in your numbers, and you and I can collaborate on one for tattoo artists specifically. That would be fine. But I
Oh,
am
yeah.
fine with just punching in numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. It does not have to be any more complicated than that.
Yeah, although, some people might say Excel spreadsheet, oh my God.
I know
But
the word
yes,
spreadsheet.
I know spreadsheet is like,
You can use a piece of paper. I ran my studio for 2 years writing down receipts by hand, and I
Mhm.
still have every single receipt in a book in my attic right now.
Right.
And you can do everything by hand in a notebook. You can have glitter pens for all I care. That's fine. Totally
Yeah,
fine.
that's funny. For a while there, I was actually taking photos of my receipts on my phone and
Mhm.
just saving them that way.
Yeah, so there are some great apps. There's even a completely free program called Wave, WAVE,
Mhm.
that's what I use my bookkeeping in now. It's all online, so I can use it from my phone. I can use it from any computer, no matter where I am. But you can take a picture of your receipt, and it just saves it, and it translates all of that data into your spreadsheet for you. So
Mhm.
you just have to take a picture of your receipt, and then at the end of the week, you can see where you're spending all your money. So
Nice.
yeah, it's nice.
I
That's
think one of the things I tell my students this, and I would tell any person starting out that is just starting tattooing or getting their career going, to go ahead and put some money away for taxes. Just
Please
go
do.
ahead, take it out right away. Don't look at it. It's not yours. Put it to the
Yep.
side.
You know, my husband, when he was in college, he was a server. He's been in the restaurant industry for a while, and um his savings method was literally a series of envelopes that he kept under
Mhm.
his bed. One
Mm,
envelope was for rent,
it
one
works,
right.
right?
Right. So you take $20 out of every tip and you put it in an envelope at the end of every week, and now you've got a savings plan. Like, that doesn't have to be any more complicated than
I
that.
love it. I love it. This is excellent for
Yeah.
newcomers, I think, to hear all of
Yeah.
this. It doesn't have to be hard. So let's go
No.
back to your conventions. Where were we
Sure,
at?
yeah. No, so we're done with the boring ones, and then the last 3 are the last 3 are a little bit easier. So continued education, I consider,
Mm-hmm.
a convention of business, because as you know, um, techniques are constantly changing, and art is constantly changing, trends are constantly changing. So if you don't set aside a little bit of time every year to put your finger on the pulse of what's going on in your industry, then your business will die out, period. I mean, if you're still selling CDs right now, you're probably in trouble. So if you're still selling CDs because you're like, well, I don't know how an iPod works, now you're really in trouble, because we're
Mm-hmm.
past iPods, right?
Right.
So continuing your education isn't necessarily just about learning the new tricks and increasing your own skill, but it could also just be re-inspiring, going to a convention, doing a summit like you're doing right now. This is continued education. You get
Yeah.
inspired with new techniques, but with new art,
Oh,
new
yes.
excitement. Yeah.
Talking to new people, especially. Yeah. There's always conventions in this
Oh
industry,
yeah.
which is awesome. And then
Oh yeah.
also, a requirement in our state is definitely that you have to
Continue.
actually
Yep.
put in 10 hours,
Credits.
like, yeah, every year.
Yep.
So there's always something new to learn, and it's
a
super
lot of
important.
a lot of the certified arts require continued education, and that's not because they're just trying to make money off of you, right? That's because it's important to keep learning.
Mhm.
It may never you may never come into convention number 9, which is team management. You may
Mhm.
not ever have employees. However, because most of us will be working in a studio alongside other artists, working with artists is very, very, very difficult, because we all have very strong personalities. So team management is a convention that is important to learn in that capacity. And I will recommend, side note, a fabulous book for unconventional folks who work with other artists. 2 books. First is the Tina Fey Bossy Pants.
Oh, cool.
I love
I
this
love
book.
her.
Yes, when I was running my cabaret and my vaudeville show and my dance studio, we would have 30 different artists, 30 different
Yeah.
performers from wildly different backgrounds. And managing a group of people like that, even if you're not in charge of them, working alongside them is difficult. And so reading Tina Fey talk about the actors and comedians that she worked with really helped me with that. And
Oh,
then there's
that's so
another,
funny.
yeah,
I used to have a theater troupe myself, actually, for a while.
yes,
I was a theater person before I came into tattooing, and still have done some since then. But I get what you're saying. The
you will love
personalities of
this
artists
book.
is very different, but very fun, very badass. I love it. But yeah,
Yes.
that's cool. I'm going to read it too.
Yep. The other one, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the Disney method of management. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's creating magic. It's it's fantastic for artists. It may be a little fluffy for some people, but I really enjoy how they break down the fact that every person that you work with is an artist and deserves to be treated with respect, even if you have to, bring them down a notch. Um, and then the last one is easy. I already mentioned it. That's the last convention is customer service. And that's a tough one when you're an
Mm-hmm.
artist and you don't want to compromise. But
Mm-hmm. It definitely is a fine line.
yeah, but if you
It's
have a
an
bad
experience.
attitude, nobody's going to want to come back for a second tattoo.
That's really true. You bring that up too, and I feel like, of course, in this industry, there are a lot of people who have sort of a rock star attitude. Like when you come
Yep.
into their shop, it's like, they're more concerned about the way they look than they are about what the client really wants.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there's something that's to be said about really giving some thought, as you said, about what are your values, what does your professionalism mean to you, what are you going to appear like when they come in, are you the kind of person that wants to have crazy hard rock playing and wearing black t-shirts and your whole place looks dark and black? I mean, that could be a thing, that could be a brand, that could be, you could draw in some people that way for sure, but
oh, sure. Well, and
maybe that's not you.
you could also have that and still be pleasant.
Yes, that's a really good point.
You can be a badass, you can be a Kat Von D, but still be really pleasant to talk to. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be so. It doesn't have to be it's my way or the highway on everything, and you also don't have to bend at every customer's whim. So one of the quotes that I put in my customer service section that I would go ahead and put out there for anybody listening to practice, to memorize, and to get to a point where you can just spout it out while you are stewing is when you're having that fight, that argument, and the customer is telling you that you did everything wrong, and the customer is telling you said you were going to do it like this, or you said you were going to do it for that price, or you didn't put the color in where I said, or blah blah blah, and you just want to punch them in the face. So the quote that I suggest you repeat to yourself is, you know what, I'm sorry about your experience today. At this point, this conversation is no longer productive for either of us. So I think we'll just end it here, and let's reach out and resolve this issue at another time. And
That's
you
great.
can say that while you have steam coming out of your ears, but that is the professional way to put an end to a screaming match that's happening in your studio in front of other people, that's going to end up on Facebook, that's going to end up tearing down your entire, the next 6 months of your books because you're difficult to work with.
Yeah.
So
And that actually applies to dealing with people over email and, in digital ways as well, because we've moved a lot, especially now, from in-person consultations to, discussing people's
oh
designs and stuff
gosh, yeah.
over email and over Instagram and on texting and all of that. So still applies though, that you can be firm but kind.
Yes. And you also have to remember, and this goes on both sides of this, you also have to remember that when there is a screen in front of you, it's a lot easier to say horrible things that you
That's not
wouldn't
true.
normally say. So there's so many opportunities that I tell people that I'm working with that are dealing with a crappy customer service situation. I tell them, suck it up, pick up the phone. And because when you have a conversation over the phone versus a text or a Facebook message or an email, you tend to let some of that go, some of that ego go just a little bit more, and say things that are a little bit more human than the things that we tend to say to each other on social media or in emails. And it goes
I
both
agree.
ways. Like I said, it's not all, the ownership is not all on the tattoo artist at that point, because
both ways, for sure.
customers tend to say some really crappy stuff when they're behind a veil, and you have to let that go.
That is absolutely true as well, for sure. I've run into that so many times. And yes, I think for some, I don't know, maybe it's because a lot of people have been raised on texting constantly or whatever, instead of actually talking on the phone, that they're a little bit more reluctant to do that. Yeah.
Yep.
And so even working on your speaking skills on the phone is a good thing to put in, right? Some time into that too. Yeah.
And
sure.
there's a section there's a whole chapter in my book on what to do, how to handle bad reviews online, what to do, scripts to follow when you're trying to either resolve conflict, things like that. So there's some examples in the book that might be useful to anybody who's opening their shop or who's been in their shop for a while and they're experiencing difficulty growing their customer base. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that I like to do.
I love that. I really do. Man, thank you so much for sharing. I really excited. Want to ask you one more, just a really crazy random question.
Ooh, yay.
Okay, well, it's not that crazy, I guess. What are you curious about right now? What are
Oh my
you
gosh.
curious about right now?
That's okay,
Is that too hard?
listeners, I was not prompted for this. So this is off the cuff. Here we go.
Off the cuff. Here we go.
So things that are really fascinating to me right now is how the virtual world is affecting our business. And because of the pandemic that we're all dealing with, in case people are listening to this in 2030, the things that are happening, so much of business has gone to social media. And I'm curious to see how the human aspect is going to come back into business in the next year or two. I'm curious. I have a feeling, because this is the way that I personally do my own business. I think that people are going to start craving real human interaction. And it's going to make the customer service, the one-on-one, the in-person, so much more important. So I'm curious to see if that plays out the way that I think it will, or if everything going to virtual is going to make us all even more robotic.
I was going to say, it's like so many sci-fi movies we've seen, right?
Is it going to be, because right now in the world of like my current pet peeve is the digital marketing, where everyone thinks, somebody thinks that, oh, I just have to take this digital marketing course and I have to write the perfect email campaign and I will have all of the customers. And so I don't think that is going to last much longer. I don't think that's useful at all in the tattoo industry, by the way, but people will try to sell you on anything if they hear you're a business owner. So I'm curious when that is going to die out and when people are going to go back to traditional advertising and sales. And I'm wondering if it's going to happen after this pandemic is over.
Well, that will be super interesting. We should get in touch and talk about it at that time.
Oh yeah, putting a note right now for 2021.
Future. Oh, I love it. Oh, so okay. So for our listeners, I'm wrapping up, who want to stay in touch with you, or they want to follow you, or maybe they want to join your Ladyboss Nation.
Yeah.
You have a little gift too. Can you share
what
that is?
Well, I'm just going to basically assume that anybody listening to this is awesome and a badass, and they want to be an awesome badass business owner as well as the artist that you are. Because if you're doing this, you're already looking for ways to grow in some capacity or another.
If they're listening here, that's what they're interested
You're already in the right place. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone pick one of the courses from the Ladyboss Nation to take for free. And right now it's set up as a membership where you pay $42 a month, and every month we focus on a different aspect of business. But they're all converting to one-off classes. And so I'm going to make a few suggestions, a handful of the classes from this year that may benefit tattoo artists the most would be that horrible, ugly creating financial projections and goal setting and understanding your money flow. That's a horrible one.
But you make it fun, so that'll be great.
Oh yeah, we do glitter pens and margaritas. So
I love it.
So that's a good one. The DIY photos one might be a good one, which also includes branding. Bookkeeping basics is another lame concept, but it's going to be very useful to you. And then something else that I kind of thought might be useful is confident pricing and negotiation. That's one of our courses where I had a guest instructor who is the owner of a company where she coaches people to speak more confidently, and it applies to business owners, because how often are you in a situation where you're face to face, you're halfway through a tattoo, and they start talking about their money troubles, and they start asking you, well, how much would this cost? Or like you're standing in the grocery line and somebody comments on your tattoos and you're like, oh, I'm a tattoo artist. And they're like, oh, well, how much would it be for this? And I'm thinking of this, and maybe if we do a bundle. So that nervousness for a lot of people starting out who don't have the confidence on what their numbers are, what they need to make, what their profit margins are going to be. But then also just the speaking component and saying to yourself, like, okay, I got this. This is what it is, and this is what it's worth. And I need to stop backtracking and stop mumbling and just say it.
Right.
So
not being afraid to talk about, getting paid. Yes.
Talking about getting paid. Yeah. Christina Cantors is her name, and she leads that course, and she's just awesome.
Yay.
And I think
Cool.
my favorite quote that I'll leave you guys with from her, because it speaks to the Lady Boss Nation and how we do things. She says she wants people to feel confident talking about yourself without sounding like an arrogant douchebag. When I heard her
note.
when I heard her say that, I was like, okay, well, I love you. And that's
wonderful.
exactly how most of us feel trying to sell our services.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness. Okay. So for our listeners, just look for the speaker's information on the event page and then click next to it on the link for the free gift. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here today.
Thank you, Shelly. This is an awesome event. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
I really appreciate the fact that you've really thought about how it applies to tattoo artists. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
To our listeners, your next interview will be delivered to your inbox. And don't forget, you have access for a full 7 days after each interview is released to listen. I look forward to joining you in our next session. Until then, be feisty, stay kind, and get creative.